paid extra for the orchestra pit.
What? This is my synagogue. Yeah. Is it? Oh, is it? Yeah, same.
First time I've been there.
Well, I was in church too. Yeah. Double trouble.
How's your camp?
Good afternoon, everyone. So welcome to Envisioning after Dismantling, the past, present, and future of DEI in Clackamas County. I'm standing up close on this, and Pam, you can hear me all right if I, okay. I'm not gonna just hunch over the computer. But yeah, welcome today, having a conversation, not just about what's happened. I think the thing that kind of unites us all and brings us all together today is the dissolving of the Clackamas County Equity Office. But more than that, there's a lot of deeper issues at play. And I'm really glad to see so many people turn out today from so many different groups doing great work. And this is an opportunity for us to build together. So we're gonna have a little discussion about just where we've been, and more importantly though, where we're going, how we can build with each other, how we can build, again, on the great work so many groups in here are doing. So my name is Bruce Poinsett. I'm with Respond to Racism LO and the Clackamas County Equity Coalition. If you've seen these little quarter sheets around, they'll take you to the Clackamas County Equity Coalition site. You can learn about the different activities, figure out what's on the calendar, also just get plugged in, because what today's really about is building our collective power. It's something I'm gonna just keep repeating, building our collective power. You know, when we talk about the dismantling of the office, you know, part of that, when you see Fox News campaigns using Clackamas County as kind of a, you know, what is it, like a testing ground? Not even a testing ground, but just as like, was it the culture war fighting ground? It means we gotta adapt and evolve with the situation. So again, just a reminder, earlier this year, January, a decision was made to dissolve the equity office. More specifically, the equity office there's a budget anyway for 3 positions. To be clear, those 3 positions are still there, but they've been moved to a different part. You no longer have equity and inclusion in job titles, which, I don't know, for people, especially if you're new to Clackamas County and you're looking for where do I go when I'm dealing with discrimination in my community? Who are the orgs on the ground that I can go to? What are the resources? Like that is an issue that hampers even just the small bare minimums. And again, there are deeper issues at play that we're gonna talk about a little bit later. But a big part of this is opposition. I'm not sure if you can read some of these signs up here. The idea, DEI equals affirmative action. And I'm not sure if you've grown up as a person of color, especially as a Black person in some of these spaces, where you've seen things like affirmative action, DEI, whatever people want to call it, used almost as like a slur almost. You know, I went to public school, but kids always ask me, Bruce, did you go to Lake Oswego High because of affirmative action? It's a weird dynamic, but that's the atmosphere we're in. And frankly, a deeper atmosphere, something else we're going to talk about today, is the very real threats of violence, the very real attacks that have happened out here. But before we get into that, Nancy Slavin from Clackamas County Showing Up for Racial Justice was kind enough, generous enough to go through a timeline just of some of the series of events that got us here. She was a very instrumental person in getting this together along with the team at Lake Oswego United Church of Christ. She couldn't be here today, but again, she shared this timeline with you all. So just gonna go through that real quick, and then we will get into today's discussion.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nancy. I am on the leadership team of our Clackamas County Showing Up for Racial Justice chapter. I am sorry I can't be with all of you today. I'm here to give a very brief history of Clackamas County Equity and Inclusion Office story. I recognize that there are many of you in the audience who could add to this story. I'm just trying to get all of us on the same page so that we can understand that this has been a history that's been going on for some time. And we're glad you're here today, and I'm excited to find out how we can all collaborate better together. So just to start, here's a picture of sort of better days when Clackamas County's officials were more willing to show themselves publicly in terms of being in support of diversity, equity, and inclusion. This is from a Portland Pride Parade. But the early days of really starting institutionalizing diversity, equity, inclusion work and measures inside the county started, of course, with citizens and people who wanted to help advise the commissioners and other county staff about the importance of this work. So in 2004, Leaders for Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Council was created. It's called LEDIC. It still exists. There's, I'm sure, many of you who have been a part of that in the audience today. And it's a volunteer advisory council that meets and strategizes how to work with the county. In 2007, the county hired a diversity manager who was officially inside the county government to begin operationalizing equity, diversity, and inclusion work. Staff got on board, staff were part of it, feeling more comfortable to speak out. There was an employee-run Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Council, or EDIC, that began to improve county relationships around hiring and training and retaining a diverse workforce. In 2013, the diversity manager was promoted to diversity director. In that time, around 2012 to 2015, the county adopted 3 resolutions: a resolution valuing diversity, a resolution affirming equal pay for women, and then a resolution valuing diversity, equity, and inclusion, recognizing that all of those pieces are important. From 2015 or so to 2020, the work continued. Again, that's when Clackamas County started participating in the Pride Parade. The diversity director was appointed and promoted to the assistant county administrator, which is really about the second highest staff job in the county, aside from the county commissioners. And he was quite recognized around the state of Oregon as being somebody in a high-level position who was working on diversity, equity, and inclusion. So the work went on. The county affirmed another resolution affirming Clackamas County as a welcoming and inclusive county. It was providing inclusive restrooms, and the commissioners themselves were codifying the work of EDI through their strategic plan, which was called Performance Clackamas. Then in 2019, the Clackamas County Administrator informed the Assistant County Administrator that he was eliminating his position. He asked him to write as much as he could of a plan about how to continue equity and diversity inclusion work throughout the upcoming months, and he did that. And then the county announced in end of 2019, early 20, that Clackamas County was creating an official equity and inclusion office, and they were seeking 3 new staff positions. During that time, the former assistant county administrator, who was, had 12 years experience leading the EDI work in the county, applied for that position and did not get past the first interview. Later, the county reached a settlement with that individual. Nonetheless, work continued in 2020, which we of course know was a difficult year for everybody. The county passed a resolution condemning violence and racism, and then importantly, the county codified Juneteenth as a permanent county holiday. And those staff folks got started. So there were 3 staff people who were working on the new Equity and Inclusion Office. And in that same time, there was an election where Mark Shull and Tootie Smith unseated some of the commissioners who had, 2 of the commissioners who had done the work to become a more inclusive county. In 2021, the Office of Equity and Inclusion was continuing to support the EDI Council through the staff, and also we're offering things like a support line for folks who were feeling like they were being impacted by racism or immigration status or other cross-cultural issues. And in 2021, the Office of Equity Inclusion and the county agreed to hire a private group, the Coalition of Communities of Color, to do a research study. That study is just finishing, and I believe that the results of that will be available pretty soon for us to see on paper what they learned about our county's sense of equity and inclusion and justice. But again, the work was continuing. An Indigenous task force formed in 2021. They wrote the county's land acknowledgement, which is up on the website, and also planned Indigenous Peoples Day events for 3 years. They've already held 2, and they've been really well attended. In 2022, in early March, the Office of Equity and Inclusion published their annual report, which highlighted their 4 priority areas: training, structure, community building, and hiring and retention. And then in 2022, there was another election, and Ben West was elected to the commission, unseating another commissioner who had been a part of this work. In 2023, in the beginning of the spring, end of April, the person who had been the director of the Clackamas County Office of Equity and Inclusion resigned from her position and took a job at the Port of Portland. In May 24th of 2023, in a budget committee meeting, Commissioner Shull proposed to cut the entire line item of the budget for the county's Equity and Inclusion Office. There was a discussion. You can watch this discussion through their old archives, but the cuts were not approved because what was more important was adopting the budget. And so they didn't really have the time to deal with that issue. So they tabled the issue. And on June 9th, the commissioners adopted the budget. And just to note that when they adopted that budget, it included $116.7 million for public safety. That's 74% of the county's general funds. And the Office of Equity and Inclusion, as I understand it, don't use general funds. And that was also the highest budget ever passed for public safety in the county. So as that was all going on, as many of you know, there was a lot of talk, a lot of outcry, and by July 6th, a petition started by Here Together, or a letter really, was signed by over 600 groups and officials and citizens to ask the county commissioners to retain funding and support for the Equity and Inclusion Office. Those discussions continued through every business meeting from June until August 2023. There was testimony by individuals, many of us in the audience, I'm sure, testifying, asking the commissioners to continue the support for the Equity and Inclusion Office. Also, it needs to be said that there were several that were opposed to that, which is all just part of the bigger discussions that are happening around the country. By August 1st, the county administrator, really to probably save the positions that still existed, which was only 2, told the commissioners he would move those positions into other departments within the county, and then finally announced that and making it official in January 2024, which is when a lot of people started to become even more aware about what was going on. So that's where we're at the moment. That's why we're all meeting today. You know, I need you to know that the volunteer group still continues to meet. The Indigenous Task Force still continues to meet with the current administration. Individuals are doing great work. I also want to say that this is a really important reason for why we want to vote. Last in 2020, the county commissioner votes were decided by 2/5 of our population in Clackamas County. So 2/5 of the folks showed up to vote, but all you need in the primary election is 50% +1 to win that election and win it in the primary and not have to win it in the November election. So it was decided. So I can't really encourage you enough to get out the vote and to know what's going on with your local elections, and also to continue to collaborate and have these conversations. So I appreciate that you're here today. I'm sorry I couldn't be with you, and I hope to see you again soon. Thank you.
And thanks again, Nancy, for that. So in the process of, trying to organize, get this together, among other things, met with Gary Schmidt, the county administrator, and while he couldn't be here today, did want to pass on first that there's a memo to colleagues in the county, and I'll just share a little bit of that as was also reposted in this story on KGW. And it says, according to Schmidt's memo to employees, a new position of County Compliance Coordinator will be added to the Office of County Counsel, focused on federal Title II Americans with Disabilities Act, Title VI Civil Rights Act, and Equal Employment Opportunity Plan, EEOP, and the 12 federal and state laws related to civil rights and equal employment in the workplace, said Schmidt. The office will oversee policy and budgetary support for Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Council, Queers and Allies, and employees of color, and will finalize the Clackamas County Research Justice Study with the Coalition of Communities of Color. Quote, these changes will help ensure Clackamas County's compliance with federal and state laws, that Clackamas County is a welcome place for all employees, and that the public has full and equal access to county services, programs, and information, he stated. Human Resources will continue to provide oversight of workplace alleged discrimination and harassment matters, Schmidt continued. Also, wanted to make sure he had his contacts for people so that you all, if you have questions, if you'd like to follow up, please follow the email address on the board. I'll give you a beat if you need to copy that or take a photo or take a pic on your phone. So as I mentioned before, while the thing that I think kind of unites a lot of us, we're coming from different communities, dealing with different issues, but when we talk about the overall equity office, one being under attack, to being dissolved, having positions moved. As I mentioned before, there's currently one position that is still, that someone is working out of the 3 that are budgeted for, but I don't know, if you were applying to be part of this work, no matter where it's housed, does this sound welcoming to you? Like it's a toxic, hostile atmosphere, which again, when we're talking about even just the bare minimum of services, if you don't have people, if you discourage people from even getting involved, we all lose from that. But also, we're talking about deeper issues. So I just pulled up this story from a few days ago where you have certain places like the Wichita Center that provides a number of services to vulnerable residents, where again, there's attacks from county commissioners even on that, where when you look at this whole umbrella of DEI, it's whether it's attack on communities of color, queer communities, communities with disabilities, people in poverty, all of this is kind of falling under this, for lack of better terms, culture war. And to make matters worse, again, you have very real threats of violence. So, as many of you know, the Clackamas County Democratic Party's office was vandalized earlier. It was vandalized last year, I should say. Among other things, I think one of the more enduring photos was this sign, which also I should note with National Hispanic Heritage Month, but you see 3, what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, let's talk with an airsoft gun and you see, yeah, 3 holes right there. Which is to say that, among other things, when I was able to meet with Administrator Schmidt as well as Commissioner Martha Schrader, one of the things we just talked about was the violence, the very real threat of violence that people are dealing with. It's not just rhetoric, it's not just political attacks. Like, there's genuine worries for people's safety. They're not theoretical, they are out there. People showing up to the county office armed in order to intimidate people is very real. So when we're dealing with that, one of the things I worry about just from a perspective of respond to racism is that historically when there's that type of pressure, who's gonna get hurt the most? What things are not gonna be advocated for that might be advocated for under, different circumstances? So use an example. So recently at the legislature, a bill was passed to reinstate policies that from the war on drugs, specifically recriminalizing drug possession. And while this is kind of more of a state issue, it's very much relevant here because I know in my own experience, with many experiences with Lake Oswego police, where if you're a young black person, you just got your driver's license, you end up having this basically, it's like a second edition of driver's ed, except at gunpoint, and often. So when laws like this get passed, I worry not just about the kids, but a lot of people. I worry that with that much more pressure to capitulate to that, again, it gets worse for the most vulnerable. Also to that end, we had, there was an original plan, not to take you too far behind the curtain, but originally for this conversation today, we're gonna have sort of a specific speaker set up. And as kind of alluded to in the timeline, when we reached out to a lot of people, either there's just certain traumas they don't really wanna dig back up for a crowd, or in a lot of cases, people who are in pending legal action who literally cannot be here to talk about some of these issues that have happened. And in my case, I'm specifically talking about community members of color, leaders of color, where, again, when you have a toxic, hostile atmosphere, the people who are closest to the issue cannot serve, or at least serve for long. Like, I can only speak specifically for like Lake Oswego, but you have people who cycle in every 2-3 years, and you have people, again, from the communities who are gonna be most impacted by these issues who, it's not worth it. So to that end, instead of having a specific set of speakers today, we're gonna just have a conversation. If you've noticed, whether it be in the fellowship hall or on this screen before we got here, there was a series of discussion questions. And I'm gonna open it up to everyone in here. I want this to, again, be a community discussion where we inform each other of like what's happening, what people are doing, but also what has happened, what are the obstacles? What are some of these hard conversations that it's been hard to have, or it's been hard to get people together for? I love the turnout today, so hopefully we can do a little bit of that. And in some of that discomfort, we start creating a path again towards collective power. So to that end, the first question is, what infrastructure, i.e. funding, physical space, personnel, policies exist to support DEI work in Clackamas County? Conversely, what do we need? And what models are out there for work that centers the most impacted communities? So I'm gonna open it up to people. We have, I think we have some volunteers who will be running the mics. Yes. For you, so if you raise your hand, someone will get a mic to you. Quickly, I'll just again plug the Clackamas County Equity Coalition. I'll be doing that all throughout here. Please get involved. Another thing I want to emphasize today is that it's not about reinventing the wheel. Oftentimes, that's a part of these conversations where, because we don't know what work people are doing, we think we need to create it. But there are groups, there are platforms to get some of that started. So, again, what infrastructure exists to support DEI work in Clackamas County? What is needed? And what models are out there, again, that center the communities that are going to be the most impacted? Do we have any brave volunteers? Yes.
Well, I work for Clackamas County. I have for 10 years, but I'm new to Health, Housing, and Human Services, H3S, and we just had a whole department meeting via Zoom where they're working on, I don't know the wording, but our whole mission statement and all of those types of things, and everything is with an equity lens. Gary knows about it. It's really based towards equity, which in turn obviously is going to help with the employees internally, but also H3S, as you can probably guess, works with the community. And so that's in the county. So I just want to, on the side note, there is some stuff being worked on. It's just not up on the top tier. So I was really pleased when because I'm new to that department, so I was really pleased that that is happening. So I just wanted to share that the folks that work there are still doing, the work, the good work. Yeah, I think that was it. Just wanted to share.
Thank you.
So the things that come to mind for me is, you already said it, our CCEC group, because we do have all the smaller groups that we're just tabling. It's not that the groups don't exist or that they aren't doing good work, but it gets hard to do the work when you're working individually in little small pods of 2, 3, 4 people. So trying to leverage as a community doing that work, I think, is one infrastructure that we already have. We just need to work on developing it more. One thing I like to keep in mind, and it's probably the biggest challenge, at least for me, is Clackamas County almost feels like 2 or 3 counties. Because a lot of the conversation, probably most of the folks in this room, are within 10 miles of Lake Oswego, or 10 or 15 miles of where we're sitting right now. And we go all the way out to Sandy and the Mountain. Right, so a lot of times, if we're gonna, if we're gonna say to the infrastructure for Clackamas County, that's an even larger conversation, and we're missing voices at the county level. If we just want to say in the kind of near Portland County type of area, of, better definition of what Clackamas County is, I think we have better access, and we also have closer ties to the county. We have closer ties to the college, like Clackamas Community College. It's got its own DEI office that has some staffing and some support. They're still, growing and developing. But again, they're in that kind of early infrastructure where they've got a little bit of more consistent funding to some degree and just ideas and people that we can bounce ideas off of. But I just want to make sure that people are recognizing we still have, even as great as y'all are for showing up in this room, we still got 2/3 of the land mass of Clackamas County is missing right now.
Going off of what Tori said, I actually live in Boring, so there's that. But no, I totally agree, and I think one of the things that I think we could use more of is space to connect more regularly. I know the coalition is obviously one of them, but I think about how infrequently we're all able to get together and share space, and I think that's really important. I think some infrastructure that does already exist that can help with that is libraries are a really good place. Obviously, they're always under attack too, but anything we can do to continue to support them and utilize them in positive ways is important. And I also think candidate training schools, learn to run for office and then do it.
I'm going to add something too, I guess. Thank you, Cassie. As far as the infrastructure, at least what I'm feeling right now is that the focus, if the focus could be on working on the infrastructure that is based within the community, I think that is a much more relevant space to put energy into right now. Oftentimes, when we think about infrastructure, you know, we're thinking about like physical pieces, and government is certainly a part of that. I think at this point in operating, we need to be working at the very, you know, grassroots level, like folks are doing. And thank you so much for having this space today. I think what I'm trying to skirt around is I don't think that we can count on Clackamas County to be part of this infrastructure building at this exact moment. And so while that might be something in the future that we can try to build up again and end up working with government, I really think the focus should be on creating the infrastructure at a community level. You know, the voting piece for sure, we can't, that could be a very immediate thing that the group works on for the May election, but I just don't think we should put too much emphasis on working at the government level at this exact moment. And maybe I'm unpopular for saying that, but that really feels to be what the truth is today, right now in Clackamas County. So kudos to everybody for coming together, and maybe we could think about ways that, like the inverse thing of usually it's what are the gaps that nonprofits can fill that government doesn't, but like I wonder if there's ways that government can help support, you know, the community versus thinking about it the other way.
I wanted to add to the conversation. I get Metro's newsletter, and we are a part of Metro, and they do fund physical spaces, i.e. parks, and seem to have, from what I see in their newsletter, an emphasis and an awareness that our public parks are not always perceived as safe places and are trying to do that. So that's a positive, but it's not relying on Clackamas County, it's looking to Metro.
Hi everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I don't know how to use a mic. Thank you. Thank you for being here. You know, I'm from Zimbabwe originally, and what I have come to think about in terms of what DEI looks like, I feel as though sometimes we get caught up in like catchphrases, and I think this is a multi-sectoral like conversation. And sometimes we can get overwhelmed by thinking about the issue from over here. Like, we are the infrastructure, right, is what we are doing right now. And so sometimes I feel as though people give up because they feel like, oh, this is way too overwhelming. No one is listening to us. What can I do about this? I can't do this because no one is listening. Why should I even vote? Because my vote doesn't count. And we forget what we're doing right now in this room. Like what I'm doing with my kid, this is the future. Just say, hey, come sit with me in this meeting. And sometimes DEI work is really, what am I doing daily today? What did I do with my friend to be mindful about the kind of life that they're living on a daily basis? Sometimes it's just a one step at a time thing. And I believe that change is generational. And so some things, it's just small steps, just putting in a seed that maybe these kids are the ones who are probably, or their kids, are probably going to be the one to actually make those like big changes that we think we are going to see, right? And part of the reason that I say this is that this country has done a really good job of selling the dream that pull up, you can do it, and forgetting that when slavery ended, literally, it was just like, okay, there you go, figure it out, you are free. And today, people have a very difficult time talking about that, the historicity of that whole thing. And some people can't just grasp that. And it's overwhelming to me, because I'm coming from another country going, what? You sold us something when we were coming here to America. I'm gonna go to America, I'm gonna go to America. And then we get here, we go, what the heck? What's going on here? How is it that my neighbor doesn't understand privilege? Like, my neighbor doesn't understand that I have privilege as an able-bodied person, heterosexual person. The idea that the question of privilege is like a curse. Like, don't say I have privilege. I've worked all my life for this. I'm like, no, I have privilege. All right, I'm gonna cut that. I'm gonna, I'm gonna stop and say, I had a rude awakening. During the census period, we were asking people, are you voting? Are you getting ready to vote? And we were reaching hard to reach communities. Are you voting? Do you know about voting, right? And I speak to someone who is somewhere, I'm not sure where, this is COVID. They are both blind. The couple are blind. Census doesn't come in Braille. And they're shut in, and no one is coming to bring the mail. And even if they get the mail, it's not in Braille. And I said, I'm asking a question from a very privileged position. Because I'm able-bodied, I can see, I can vote, quote-unquote, normally. I thought, oh my gosh, that's what privilege looks like, folks. So on a day-to-day basis, I'm just having to question my privilege and how I'm living space today for someone who is experiencing the world through a very different lens, whether it is able-bodiedness, whether it is race, whether it is a combination of all of those intersecting identities, right? It's not just about race and ethnicity, right? So I think, yes, to sum up, it's an everyday journey that we all are on. And it is my duty every day to kind of think about how am I living my world consciously. Thank you.
So I believe, or wait, no, there's a couple hands in the back. I'm just going to move the screen to the next question. So we got a few slides, but yeah.
I think this is in regards to the prior slide, but it's the LDIC is still a valid working organization as a part of the Clackamas County government, correct? As far as I know, yeah. So I'm just saying that particular piece is still there, so we really need to protect it, because that is the voice of volunteers who are supposedly giving advice to the county board of commissioners. So that is specifically one of the things that I hope that stays with the county, that leadership group. Thank you.
The only other thing I was just going to add in was on the financial side. So when we've been looking at what the county's plans are for managing houselessness, a lot of that involves relying on community-based organizations like maybe some of the folks in this room to manage that work for them, right? That's stuff that the county would have otherwise been paying. They're either using grant funds or some other mechanism to move the money out to another group to do the actual boots-on-the-ground work. And I was just in a meeting with IDOT, and they were talking about the tolling and how maybe one of the ways they can deal with some of the tolling stuff is to have community-based organizations do some work to help people figuring out like low-cost toll. Like, there are people that are at the governmental, county or state level that are going to be relying on us to do work, but do we have the funds to be able to stay functional to do that work, right? And so do people know how to access funds that they can get either at the city, state, or federal level to keep y'all functional. I mean, probably most of y'all, if you're 501c3s, you're running on like a shoestring budget, you're waiting on volunteer money to come in, right? Which makes it hard to know on a day-to-day basis whether you can do the work that you're trying to do. But there should be funds out there, especially if we're going to be called upon to do some of the work that really should be happening by the county or by the city or by the state, right? We should be able to get those funds and have the training to be able to access those funds easily and efficiently.
Hello, I'm Keisha Brewster. I'm a resident of West Lynn. I use she, her pronouns. I am also a member of Metro's CORE, which is the community, or it's the Council for Racial Equity. And I would like to also mention that, to my understanding, we do have some county commissioners that are going to be on the ballot soon. And what we need to do as a collective group is review and understand what their policies, principles, and procedures are that they would like to put onto the county when they're looking at equity. If you disagree, please talk to your neighbors, your friends, your family. Please make sure that they are able to vote, and please vote against those policies, okay? The other thing that we need to make sure that we do is complain in a formal way, not in a non-formal way. Gary, we appreciate your email, but no, that will not work. Unfortunately, there is a department at the county level that does take formal complaints. You can complain. Those complaints are analyzed and reviewed and brought to the county commissioners every year to understand where they could do better. Emails are great, but when you do a document request, they can be redacted, information can be pulled, deleted, and discarded. Your voice counts, everyone. Your neighbor's voices count. The next generation's voices count. Unfortunately, as you have seen, and I have experienced, it does mean sometimes violence to those people who are on the front lines. We appreciate everything you're doing. Keep up the good work and spread the word that we're not going anywhere.
Hello, Jeanette. I live near Happy Valley in unincorporated Clackamas County. I wanted to talk to the question on the other slide. Infrastructure includes the Clackamas County Equity Coalition. It includes our government. It includes the way that there are existing groups that interact with government groups like PTAs and PTOs, like advisory commissions. That's not the only thing. The really exciting thing I've seen in the past 5 or 6 years is folks finding each other, that we're not doing this alone, that we're building a coalition and network. What we need is more people, and we need people to be at every space where they are. One of my blind spots, I'll just say, is faith communities. I'm like a devout atheist. So really think broadly about who can help with this work. I haven't heard anybody mention labor unions, and there are sort of a wide berth of how they get involved. Think about what are their models? What are their models for organizing? Is that something we can borrow? I would also suggest that we think about the ways in which the laws and rules around nonprofits, churches, organizations discourage us from being political in a public way. As a public sector worker, I get many emails every year about all the things I cannot say at work, but I get 0 emails about my union rights. Recognize the places of power that you have. If you can be there and say something, definitely try to be there and say something. And it really, my invitation is to think broadly and to also think about what are things you're already doing and incorporate that there. I'll wrap it up, sorry.
Thank you for that toss to these next questions, actually. So with that, you want to know, there's For those who are tuning in online, we had a tabling hall with a number of grassroots organizations in Clackamas County represented, just an opportunity for people to meet each other, learn about what each other's doing, learn how to get involved. And to bring it to this discussion, simply put, what do grassroots groups in here need? You know, you mentioned just people showing up. I think obviously that's the big one. But also, where are the areas where we are collaborating, and what do some of those collaborations look like?
It's Keisha again. So I would like to also let you know that CORE's next Metro meeting for CORE is on March 7th, and an email actually was sent out. It was a request by some members to ask for any type of equity work to be a public place for Metro during our CORE meetings. So if you have any type of events that you would like us to know at Metro, please tell me. I'm here to take those. I will take those every single month, and we will have a place for those, okay? We will make sure that those get passed around. So if you feel like your voice isn't being heard, bring it to me, and we'll take it over to Metro.
I'm Joy from West Lynn. I didn't introduce myself last time. We are also a organization is called Building Bridges in West Lynn, and we are collaborating mostly with the school district, and I think those are some of the collaborations. And for me personally, I do believe that education, whatever that looks like, is also a very, it's an important tool to talk about DEI work. And can I give an example? We showed a movie at the West Lynn High School called Black Girl in Suburbia. And then when we tried to have that movie shown in the middle school, there was kind of pushback to say, well, our kids are not ready to have these conversations about race, which was, yes, I know. I'm glad, right? Because the kids already in the middle school are already very much aware of all the other hurtful things they can say to other kids. So I think that the schools with grassroots organizations can work very collaboratively and effectively together. Thank you.
This is Cassie again from Boring. I realized I didn't introduce myself last time. I organize with Clackamas DSA. An example of the way that collaborations have looked in the past for us has actually been related to something Tori was saying earlier, is relying on the organizations that do have staff and do have that time and capacity and resources to do a lot of the more time-consuming work, hence why Here Together has been so instrumental in being able to do some of the larger countywide organizing stuff because they have staff to do it. Shout out Cole, even though you're not with them anymore. But yeah, so that's like one example. But it's like, yeah, how do we get more of that? Because yeah, I mean, it's like when people are working full time and then come home and are exhausted, it's like they don't have much more to give. What was the other thing I was gonna say? I can't remember right now.
Well, if there's actually, Pam, do we have any responses online? No. Okay. And we will.
I should remember. Oh, the other thing I was going to note is, as somebody who lives in Boring, just a reminder that Metro does not cover the entirety of any of the counties. I do not live in Metro.
So, yeah, not sure, Tori, if you have for this question of the previous one.
One other small thing, and I know we've been trying to get at least this part addressed from the previous slide through CCEC, and I guess I should introduce myself. Tori Blackwell, I am currently chairing the Lead It group at the county. So yes, we are still actively doing work, and I see a couple of current Lead It members and a couple of past Lead It members in the room. So even those have gone on to do wonderful and great things, so at least we're doing our Lead It job of developing some folks. We're all doing a lot of things and just figuring out how to coordinate the stuff that we're all doing as individual groups, right? The number of times where I'll find out like one group was doing a thing at the same time as another group was doing a thing. And it makes it hard for us to even support each other. So figuring out ways that we can communicate with each other and get on the same kind of schedule so that we can support each other. Especially if you know you've only got like 3 or 4 people. Like, I'd love to like come to your event and maybe volunteer if you needed it, except I'm at a different event, right? We run into that all the time.
Hi, everyone. My name is Erica Hernandez with Youth and Family Services at Hacienda CDC. And right now, we're building a new affordable housing unit here in Lake Grove, but also have been in Molalla and Oregon City. And so, I don't know, diversity, equity, inclusion, but really like building spaces of belonging and community safety are a big part of our work. And a lot of where we have found a lot of collective power is gathering in spaces like this, but really we have a lot of community organizers working at our, at our properties who are members of the community who have built so much trust in the spaces where we do programming or workshops or education. And I think there's so much power to that because to share kind of a bright spot in Molalla, we've had a community organizer there for 10 years, and now City Council, other members of the state are coming to that community to say, hey, what is for our farm working community, like what are barriers to access and education? How can we collaborate with you? And so I think that building spaces where community members feel safe, welcome, and a sense of belonging are so important. And we have like a $70,000 grant from the Ford Foundation to do this work. Like that's our financial capital in this, but I think the social capital of community members recognizing that we're all trying to do the same work, and again, not doing things in parallel lanes, but where can we cross over is really, really important, and working in a community where thinking about Molalla or other rural communities, I think it's really important to build in Clackamas County connections statewide, because again, what's happening in this community might be very different, than Oregon City or other rural communities. So I think that's really important.
So we can move to the next set of questions, which are, who do you go to when facing discrimination in your community? And where are the affinity groups in your community? I know a conversation that Respond started in 2017 and it's been had both in LO and throughout the county is just, where are the sustained, supported affinity groups? Where do we go as our different respective communities to build with each other? Obviously, it's a beautiful mixed space we're in, but that community building, that just being able to support each other in informal spaces is very valuable. So I'm gonna quit teeing it up and turn it back to everyone. But yeah.
I'm Joni. I'm a junior at Lake Oswego High School, And me and Uriah, we run the Youth Empowerment Committee for Respond to Racism. At least for like affinity groups in our community, I think, at least for like the younger generations, in schools, I'm glad that at least now there are spaces for like kids of color to like have those, you know, like there are those spaces at school. We're both in the Asian American Student Union at our school, and we're actually organizing the Asian Cultural Festival, which is April 20th at LOHS, so you should go to that. But no, there's, you know, Black Student Union, there are other affinity groups at the school which definitely need more attention, and I feel like if there was more attention focused on these places for students, then I think we would have way more of a welcoming community. And like LO has a reputation for a reason, and I think if we allocate more time into not like advertising, but like at least just saying that there are places for students, and you know, there are these places. So I think as long as we, like, schools can say, you know, if you're like BIPOC youth, then like there's a place for you, and yeah. So.
I am glad your district and school has been very supportive of efforts like that. The only downside that I have run into is, let's say you're a district or a school and in your building there are no teachers of color.
Yeah. No, we struggle with that.
Yeah. And then if you do maybe have one teacher of color that's willing to create this affinity group, the question that comes up almost invariably in all those conversations is, why does that group need an affinity group? There's other students that they can hang out with, so why do they even need that kind of support? I don't know what you're talking about. Just, they can make friends over here, they do wrestling, like that's fine. People get that pushback, and then it makes those folks that work there, it gives the impression that that's not wanted. And so they have fear over the idea of being willing to even lead the affinity group, so then you don't even get an affinity group. So I guess my suggestion would be that if your school doesn't have that, and it's something that you feel like your kids need, to push on those school administrators and those school boards to ask why it's not there and ask what's needed to get it there, so that we can have the stories like you're telling about your student group being able to put on cultural events and do the fun things and feel like they are seen and heard and respected, because I don't think that's happening in every district in the county.
Yeah. Our student union has, like, there are a lot of Asians at our school, thank God. But, you know, like, we definitely have a lot of privilege just because of how, well, our club is just so big, and also it provides a lot of good publicity for the school district, and there are a lot of people who come to this event, like over 1,000 people come each year. And so, you know, it definitely gives LO like a lot of good publicity, like, oh, we're so diverse and so woke, yay. So, I mean, it's like people who go there for the right reason are there for the right reason, and we can unite in that way. But the school district, we've definitely also run into, we have a lot of privilege, definitely, but we've also run into a lot of issues with, you know, diversity in staff in our schools, and just how these kids are being treated, because some don't have that space, and some, like, if they run into issues with like harassment, discrimination, which happens all the time, a lot of the time there isn't a place where kids can go and like consult with someone else. So yeah.
I don't need a microphone. My name's Diana from West.
Please get the microphone. For the people online, we need the microphone.
Hello, Diana from Westland. I was wondering if you ever get outreach from more rural communities for how they can start the same kind of safe space.
No. I mean, I think everything that goes on within our school is kind of stays within our school. We did have a group called Engage to Change. I don't know if any of you guys know what that is, but I'm not sure where in Oregon they're from, but it was kind of an anti-racism like training, and the principal called on like a few of us to go and join it, which was kind of weird actually. But she called on me and Uriah and like a few other kids to come and like take this training because she thought like we'd like it or something like that. I don't know. Okay. But we don't really have people from other places, I guess. We have some people. Yeah, no, we don't. Yeah. Yeah.
In Oregon City, we don't necessarily have affinity groups, but we do have No Place for Hate, which is supported by the Anti-Defamation League, and they'll come and bring trainings and opportunities to support students making changes within their schools. So it's not an adult-led, you have to have an adult involved, but it's student-led change, and that's at the elementary schools, the middle school, and the high school. So that's something that's available in Oregon City, and I helped spread it in Oregon City and be happy to talk to you or anyone. My name's Heidi Blackwell, and I'm from Oregon City, obviously.
I forgot your original prompt about where do you go? So I used to go to the county EIO office if I had specific things. So there's that. But the other place that I would go to was, I mean, especially over the summer when I'm really out and about, man, sometimes I wear out that Oregon Department of Justice bias hotline. Not necessarily because I think it's gonna like somebody's gonna show up in 15 minutes and do a thing, but because of what Keisha was mentioning about having data and numbers. So just so that the things that I am seeing or running into actually show up someplace on a report and don't disappear into the ether. The downside, and I guess it's a thing that I would ask some of y'all, because I know some of y'all are, represent the groups that, so when you call the Department of Justice, one of the things they have is they have a person that will call you back and give you resources for how you can navigate that, whatever happened to you. So my question for some of y'all is, some of y'all are the people that you would get directed to for support. But what happens if you're the person that's making the call? So you are your own support? Which I've had happen to me. So like, the other reason I think like having this space is so that maybe we also have some ways to support folks when the callback is, well, just talk to Unite Oregon. I'm the Unite Oregon rep that just got called something in the middle of the street. I'm talking to myself now. This is cool. No, I mean like, right. So just kind of keep that in mind.
So my name's Christine Kennedy, and actually I was going to ask about this, the hotline. And I'm not sure, I mean, maybe everybody here knows exactly what that is and how to call it. Okay, so y'all know. Okay. I want to understand more. I came to an early presentation by Respond to Racism, and there was a presentation of the data from this hotline. So I'd like to know a little bit more about it, how people are using it, whether it's what kind of, I mean, you're alluding to the fact that sometimes you're referred back to yourself for support. So it seems to me that's one of the challenges, is to look at, if that's happening, are there more groups that maybe could provide that support in terms of a conversation or that type of thing? Anyway, I'm interested in the reporting and how people do that. Thank you.
I'm just going to make a quick plug because I think, when's our next CCEC? We think we have our next quarterly meeting. Someone from the Oregon Department of Justice is going to come and present and share like some of the data around how that like what that system has for us as a county, and hopefully for some of the cities, it depends on what the data looks like, if they can disaggregate across the different cities. Because if it's too small, then you could actually identify folks. So they're going to have that conversation with us, and I'm sure they will be happy to give us some more information on how that part, like how they collect some of that data. I usually, what was that? April 18th. What I usually just Google Oregon Department of Justice bias hotline, and I get the website, and it's got an online form that you can complete. You can complete it for other people. I'd strongly encourage folks to be willing to complete it for other people, because there are different groups that they would feel uncomfortable sending their information to the state, right, in that way. So if you are comfortable doing that and you see something, and it has the ability in the screen to like take, to differentiate between whether you were the person that were impacted or you're reporting on the behalf of that person, but it has, lots of data collection in there.
Hi there. Go ahead, Connie.
I'm Connie Lee, and I'm from West Lynn now. My husband and I did have a reason to call in a bias incident at the beginning of the pandemic, and I didn't know how to do that. And so Melissa Fireside said, well, you can call the CIA, So I didn't know how to do that, but I did have a good relationship with the Lake Oswego chief of police. So he walked me through it. He said he did it, but and he thought he did it, but it turned out that I think that it was supposed to go through the Oregon Department of Justice. So there are, if you didn't know, there's bias crimes, and they're in a lot of different areas, LGBT, racial, all kinds of biases, and they can be bias crimes or they can be bias incidents. Ours was a bias incident. When we first called the police, they told us, oh, I'm sorry, can't help you. And I said, well, I am going to call your chief of police after we hang up here. Are you sure? And he said, yep, no, we can't help you. And so I called the chief of police, and he said, well, he knows better. And he did this thing for me. So, you might run into some, stumbling blocks, but it can be done. On the other hand, we didn't get any help from that particularly. So I would have liked to have had a group that I can go back to for help.
Hi again, sorry. I have three sort of different thoughts I'd hope to share. One is I heard a couple of examples of people of color being asked to fix racism, and I hope it's really obvious to everyone that that's not fair or right, and as white people, we have a larger role to play in short-circuiting that when we see it. I will also say, I don't know where affinity groups are for folks. I know where there are for my kids. There's an Asian Pacific and Islander Student Union, for example. I know in my neighborhood where there's a Black Santa every Christmas, but I don't know where affinity groups are for other folks. So that's definitely a goal for me.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sushmita Podar. I use she, her pronouns. I live on colonized Atfalati lands. I heard a few things. Some of the questions were about affinity groups and finding people that you can look to for safe, to talk to, communicate with, report incidences. I've not yet heard too much about accessibility to all of that, as in, what about transportation? Clackamas County is not connected by public transportation. So it doesn't matter whether we have this one school that has awesome groups or this one church or this one religious organization or a community-based organization in different parts of the county, but if people cannot get to them, it doesn't matter. Those might as well not exist. Then those groups, organizations, trainings, workshops are only constantly going to be for that small group of people that have access to get to those places. So I don't think we talk enough about transportation, dignified transportation for people. How are youth supposed to connect with one another if they are only stuck in that same area? They go from home to that school, and that school is harmful, but they have to still go back home, and they still live in that same place, and they cannot ever get out of there. They don't know what the world outside of that space looks like to be able to build those bridges with each other. So it is, and when we talk about, I mean, a simple word like Asia, right? We don't understand the number that's Asian. It's 63.5% of the global population. 63.5. When you combine that with Pacific Islanders, it becomes 69.8. That's 70% of the world population condensed down to 3 acronyms, 3 letters, API. So not all Asians know about each other. So are we expecting what's happening? Palestine is Asia. So is Japan. So is Pacific Islands like Fiji. So are we talking about, and China and parts of Russia, that's all Asia, and India. So when we talk about these acronyms, we talk about demographics, and we start clubbing such vast numbers with diverse experiences, groups of people together, we are doing disservice right there and then, because we have not put in the effort to understand the diversity amongst the POC groups itself. And do all POCs who are dealing with circumstances, adverse circumstances and situations, do they know about each other? We have our own problems too. So we can't expect one person of color to represent all people of color, which is 86% of the global population. So I think we need to start having those realistic conversations. Do we even know our people first? Do those people know about each other? And then how are we, when we are creating these groups and asking that, how are you connecting? How are we communicating? The first thing is, can you get to it? Where all are they? Who is running it? Representation matters, right? If all people in power are white, how are we going to expect change and see change? I see people of color working for white people. I don't see people of color making decisions and being in power and directing how things are going to be done. They are handpicked to run a workshop, to run a group, to run a situation. So we have to start visibly. Some people will have to start getting uncomfortable and start stepping out of the way. That how many more of us do we need to see be in power? Let's step back and make space for others to occupy their own places of power. So I think these are things that could start helping in ensuring representation and inclusion, and also talking about real factors that how are people getting to things. Yeah, that's it. Thanks.
So I feel like that kind of tees us up to this next set of questions, which is, are there issues that DEI, whether that's at the county, city, school district, corporate, even grassroots level, has been afraid to touch? And how do we actively prevent the pitfalls that come from white-centered DEI? So do we just lose all that? Okay. So just to reiterate the questions then, are there issues that DEI, whether at the county, city, school district, corporate, or grassroots level, has been afraid to touch? And how do we actively prevent the pitfalls that come from white-centered DEI? I had a feeling this would elicit a little more quiet before we got something.
Wait, I wanted to mention that DEI, like especially at schools, I feel like hasn't really been talked about a lot, but the retention of teachers of color, I think it's one thing, like schools often make a point of, you know, when they hire teachers of color, yeah, that's great, but what really matters is keeping them there and making sure that they have a space to like feel comfortable. And it can often feel, I mean, I can't imagine like how isolating it must feel to be like a token teacher of color just for that, you know. But yeah, I think that like DEI, I mean, it's hard because there are so many DEI, like it's getting dismantled all over. So, but I think that something that can be focused on is like retaining those teachers of color and those educators. So, yeah. I think I turned it off. Anyone else?
Actively, I'm sorry, Amanda, I live in Oak Grove, which is right outside Milwaukee. Actively preventing the pitfalls that come from White Center DI. I'll try it. Can you hear it? Can you hear me? Is it on? Okay. So I work in healthcare. My kiddos go to North Clackamas School District, so I've been involved in some of their community conversations in healthcare. You know, DEI is a big thing right now too. I think the pitfall is that we circle this sort of getting just right at the surface, right? We talk about privilege. We bring in people of color to tell their trauma stories over and over again to prove to us that these things are happening. And we never get to the, and what do we do? So I think creating events and situations where people can come together to do something instead of this academic sort of talking about there's these problems, and because at this point, if people don't know, it's because they don't want to know, or they're just choosing to be they're just willfully ignorant because it's all around us. So the constant platforming people of color to just tell us over and over again their experiences, which are very real, but they shouldn't have to keep proving that to people. So I'd like to see more action-oriented stuff where we can do something about it, where we all come together to do something about it instead of just talking about these things happen. So.
There's a special place in my heart for the anti-black versus just general, like we are dealing with racism, because there's a difference in the way that racism hits black people compared to some of these other groups. If you start to look at like that, you know, distance from whiteness and assimilation, all these other things, right? Like there's another thing that comes up, and it kind of gets back to what Sushmita was saying earlier about when we push all the letters together, it gets really easy to be like, yeah, we've done some great work for BIPOC communities. And you look and it's like, yes, like all of our Asian students are doing great. Not to do anything bad for the Asian students. Yes, you are. But some people will use that as their information that says we are doing a really good job navigating our BIPOC student population. And it almost always is the black students that get left out or get traumatized or, you know, whatever that nobody seems to care about. So there's an additional anti-blackness that sometimes gets lost in the anti-racism work.
I would add that accessibility and disability seem to get left out of the conversation constantly. A lot of it often comes back to things that Sushmita was saying about how if you can't access the space in the first place, then how are you going to participate and be that voice in the room? And sometimes it's, you know, other people speaking up and being that voice in the room that allows us to get there in the first place. So anything people can do to ask, is this accessible when you're planning things is important. And then I think too, just always looking at things from a lens of intersectionality and a racial lens and a racial justice lens, because my experience as a white disabled person is not the same as the experience of a black disabled person. And so just always coming back to looking at things from all points of view, and then, yeah, taking tangible action to change situations. Also, as a member of the Clackamas County branch of the Democratic Socialists of America, I would be remiss as to not say capitalism.
I've kind of adding on to that, talking about like all voices in the room. I think all voices just like deserve to be heard. So is there anyone who hasn't gotten to speak up about, you know, even something small or anything like that?
Thank you. My name is Catherine. I use she, her pronouns. For me, as an individual who is a Christian, I think that it's really important for us to recognize how often folks have difficulty reconciling the ways that the Christian church, particularly in the United States, has compromised its faith, has compromised the foundations of our faith, and maybe elevated those who have done the good work without recognizing the culpability and the compromise and the importance of, I think, daily reflecting on that piece.
My name is Annie, and I use she, her pronouns. I really appreciate people weaving that in. I think for me, the piece that we've been afraid to touch is whiteness. And I think particularly in the city of Lake Oswego, we like to have celebrations. We like to have music. We like to have the mayor get up and give a speech. But we don't want to go deeper than that. And I think there's an absence of a space and a place for that in Lake Oswego. And I realize it's more complicated to that. I think Respond to Racism has been trying to create a space for that. I'm actually in the middle of this weekend, I'm blowing off my homework for my teacher next Friday to give a draft for a workshop for white people to look within and how to work with shame so it's not so dang immobilizing. I'm using polite words because Ms. Willie's in the room and I want to be respectful to you. In private, I use a different D word. But I think it's the whiteness and the whitewashing and the performativeness, even for those of us who are white and liberal. It's deep work, it's painful work, but it's necessary work. And I'd really like to see our mayor join that work. I'd like to see myself do that work deeper. I'd like to see all of us who have been racialized as white do that work more deeply.
My name is Urya, and I also go to Lake Oswego High School. At our school, we have me and the other leaders at the Asian American Student Union, and then like BSU and LHSU, we meet with our school's DEI director, I guess. She is an ASB. And so we meet with her and then the vice principal, Mr. Hollingsted. And basically that creates a space for like, we basically discuss different issues, like how can we make the school more inviting for people of color and all that stuff. But sometimes he doesn't like follow through. So it's good that he created this space, but at the same time, like nothing really is being done other than like discussion.
Hi, I'm Pee Wee. Hi, Cole. I'm with Unite Oregon, community organizer. I moved from Thailand to United States to live 2016 and start to learn about the work that Unite does 2018. And it's been a very interesting journey for me, getting to learn about the social racial justice. As an immigrant, I feel that it's so hard for me to get to understand the context, the new culture. So the education piece is very important for us. It is not easy to kind of, we talk about this like fake news or misinformation, disinformation, right? So from somebody, although would love to understand, would love to learn, it's just so hard to distinguish which one would be the truth or beneficial for us. So that was a little bit about myself. The second piece I would like to say would be to respond to the very first question about the infrastructure. I live in Beaverton, and I noticed, I don't know which office kind of government agency has the first DEI office. Probably City of Beaverton. Let's say they call cultural inclusion. That was 2014 probably. And then the county has the first equity officer 2020. And I was like, wow, it took them that long, 200 something years. And then the city of Tigard had the first equity officer, I believe 2021, 2022. And I think they don't have that person. City of Tigard has been looking for equity officer, like posted, but maybe they take it down. I don't know if they already hired. But what I also notice is that I feel people who work in this world must have been pretty lonely and must have been under a lot of pressure externally, internally, since they also facing their counterpart, their colleagues within the organization, and then they are facing community. And community members, when we have lots of frustration, like we have lots of complaints. So when we see this person representing the government agency, sometimes we just like give them a hard time. And then they go back and then they have a hard time as well. So thinking about the structure, I was thinking about maybe this unit should not be inside the existing structure. It should be independent, but it should have some sort of like authority. But how could we form, what it would look like, I have no idea. All right, the last piece. When we talk about healthcare, so I was a medical interpreter, healthcare interpreter at one point. And I was my background before I came here also involved the quality assurance. So in tech, we're talking about iteration process, right? To improve, getting feedback and then make the system better, right? So I noticed very frightening quality of interpretation services. And I was like, wow, how can we make this better? So checking with OHA, Oregon Health Authority, healthcare interpreter, there's an office that, having this registry. And I try to find ways for the recipient, the consumer, to make a complaint. Non-English speakers, right? does not exist. And also, I mean, I have to kind of do very deep search. And also it's in English. It took me about a year to get that office to translate into my language. But that was like through, like really, like I'm kind of, I gave that person a hard time. But it just showed that the organization which has the name, in their name, authority, they didn't want to have that authority, just like, oh, we do not have, you cannot do that, we do not have, whatever. So, yeah, thank you.
This is Shmita again, just to emphasize what PV's talking about, the Washington County DEI officer quit last year. Because, of course, their office is in the same building and the same structure that they were supposed to reform, right? And most of the DEI offices and people actually, directors are not actually part of the larger community. They don't have a clue about the extended community because they've never been given a chance to interact directly with the community. So they have other people who do that work, but are they all getting the support? So most of the DEI stuff, even including Beaverton and Washington County, they are not non-functional. In fact, a lot of them are going against what they had promised that the offices are going to do. And I think I've heard often enough that this work of accepting privilege and circumstances is very, it's a lot of hard work, it's very difficult. I don't think we look at it from a standpoint of liberation. Acceptance is liberating. Because now you don't have to deal with the guilt and shame. Now you can do the hard work. But why do we have a problem with acceptance, which could be liberating? It's because we have literally a universal culture, global culture, one common culture of denial. We love denying things. That person got hurt, deny it. They got assaulted, deny it. This person dealing with racism, deny it. Denying it, we keep shrouding it with whatever, as if we hide it, put it in the closet, bury it, it doesn't exist. We are not an ostrich. We cannot avoid the storm by burying our head in the sand. So I think if we start saying that acceptance is liberating for me as an individual and share the same thing with others, that this is not hard work. There is rampant anti-blackness amongst the Asian communities. Remember, India was colonized for 300 years, so we still carry a colonized mindset. Just because people have kicked out the colonizers doesn't mean that our brains are not colonized. So we still have to deal with that as well. But accepting that didn't make me feel guilt or shame. I was like, oh, now I can do the fun stuff of how do we break all of that down. So how do we bring something joyous to becoming better? I think if we accept it, we would become better humans, right? When we talk about government and community, we keep doing this, I promise to keep it short now, government versus community. Government is people of the community, and I think we keep forgetting that. Government is not a foreign entity, government is not an alien, government is just a name for people from the community who seem to forget that they are employees of the community and part of the community. So how do we start teaching our community to boss up and start saying that, hey, you wouldn't walk into my store, give me $500 and walk away. Why are you giving $30,000, $40,000 of your hard-earned money and walking away? So how do we start educating community about being good bosses and educating people working, community people working in the government sector? Please know your place. You are just your community's employee, and you cannot go against your bosses or against their best interest, because we seem to keep electing people and then we have to beg them. Do you realize how much begging we are doing? We elect them and then we beg them. We beg them for housing, for healthcare, for education, for food, for everything under the sun. Why are we begging? Why are we creating a culture of begging all the time? We have to beg our state legislatures. Why? Why are we constantly putting people to repeat their stories of trauma again and again and again and then dropping them? Are we helping them? Are we supporting them when they come and share their stories of trauma? Because I think we need to stop this nonsense, what we are doing. Please, let's just stop this begging crap. And if any elected person makes us beg for what we hired them to do, let's kick them out of the door because it's enough now. So.
So we got a hand in the front.
Hey, everybody. Do you mind if I stand up, Bruce? Hey, everybody. My name is Valdez Bravo. I use he, him, his pronouns. And this is such a great conversation, Bruce. Thanks so much for organizing this. This is a perfect segue from what Sushmita just told, because this is where my thoughts were. And I just want to offer a little context. I got my hands in a lot of things, but my day job, and I'm not here in that role, but my day job and experience is as Deputy Director of the Health Department at Multnomah County, the Multnomah County Health Department Deputy Director. And as a kind of parallel to the timeline that was showed, we have what we call a workforce equity strategic plan that was in the works, very much employee-led, right, starting back in like 2015. And the Workforce Equity Strategic Plan, or the WESP as we call it, really is like the foundation for building and integrating and weaving DEIB principles into everything that we try or aspire to do at the county. And we don't get it right every day, but we try. And the fundamental aspect of that is to promote trust, safety, and belonging. Or safety, trust, and belonging, right? Because you can't have trust before you have safety. It's like Maslow's hierarchy. And then you can't have trust, and then only then you create a sense of a true culture of belonging where people actually not only there, and we have people that look and different than us and stuff in the room, but and actually are included in being asked, but truly feel like they belong and they want to stay there, which speaks to the retention piece. So the whole reason I'm saying that is, although there was good work that was happening here in Clackamas, and it was like marching up, and I live here, I live in Lake Oswego, so that's why I'm here today too. But I work downtown. The reason I'm saying that is the reason that we have that, WESP, and this goes back to collective power and your theme of collective power, Bruce, is because of our employees. This goes back to Sushmita. Basically, the employees are the ones that called on that. They're the ones that the county, Multnomah County, didn't just decide to create the WESP. They wouldn't have done that if they hadn't felt some pressure to do that. It was really on the employees, and we have a robust set of employee resource groups representing a variety of aspects of community, people with different lived experience, people with different accessibility. I'm in the Veterans ERG. I'm in the Indigenous ESP, the Managers of Color. There's so many different ones, but those groups are the ones that banded together and did that and called on it, and they're the ones that kind of hold the board's feet to the fire. And when there's a proclamation month, be it Black History Month or AAPI Month or Indigenous Month, they come up, the staff themselves are the ones that are coming and presenting those proclamations, and they ask for real actions. They don't want just words. Sometimes the words in doing that proclamation is the action, but also like what is the thing that's going to happen differently? And, I just try to imagine, like, if they tried to, like, roll back the WESP or go back on some of the progress that we made despite what's happening at the Supreme Court and elsewhere, there would be hell to pay. The employees would be irate, and they would be telling their neighbors and their friends and their community, and then when it comes times to the election, people would not get elected. So I just want to, like, dovetail on what Sushmita said and say, like, stop. We're not begging here. We're talking, we're strategizing, we're coming together. But I think that the employee resource groups in Clackamas County, who are spread not just here in Lakeville and Westland, but all over the county and work all over this beautiful area coming together, I think if we can empower them and get them involved in part of the fight, I think it would create a lot of pressure on us. Because I think, as I understand, there's only 3 ERGs in Clacko. I'm not sure, but locals and unions and the AFSCME union that probably represents them is the way to go and to get them in on the fight, because real change can happen from the bottom up and from the inside. So I just wanted to share that.
So I wanted to, again, thank everyone for good conversation today. I recognize we're getting increasingly over time here, so I'm going to just offer this up. I'm going to do a few quickly, but the last question, to the point about action, because that's the thing that always comes up when we talk about this. What actions are we going to do? What are we going to do besides talking, getting together? And again, I do hope that people really meet each other, connect, plan to build with each other from this, because a lot of these rooms kind of, maybe this is a little bit of an offshoot of the point about government, but a lot of these spaces are what we make them. And when we ask some of these questions about, especially like what's missing and what can we do, once we have that question on the board, then we get together and we solve it. So to that end, what actions are organizations here that are represented in this room? What are actions that people are planning and or currently undertaking, and how can people get involved? And the second question, which I'll let you not have to answer it right here, but just take with you, is what actions will you commit to joining? So I know Tori made the point about, learning about action while you're doing something else. I know Unite Oregon is currently holding a recriminalization rally, and I feel terrible personally that it's like I'm doing this, I should be there. But, we fix that problem going forward. So yeah, what actions are organizations planning, undertaking, and for those who want to learn how to get involved, where can they go? What do they need to do? Yeah.
Sorry, different hat. When I'm not doing my county day job, I'm president of Healthcare for All Oregon. And Dr. Martin Luther King said that of all the injustices out there, the injustice in healthcare is the most inhumane because it often results in physical death. And so if folks here, we're battling every day we believe that racism is a public health crisis, and we're battling every day to make sure that we close the inequities in the gap and fighting for a single-payer universal healthcare system here in Oregon. So if that's something that you're excited about, it's not directly related to what's happening in the Clackamas Commission, but it's all related, right? And so anyway, if you're interested in fighting for getting racism out of healthcare and the unjust system we have now, Valdez, I'll hang around. I got some cards to find out how to get involved with Healthcare for All Oregon. Thanks.
Good afternoon. Good to see you, Bruce. My name is Antonio Fernandez. I work with Joy in Westland. We started building bridges out of the Michael Fesser. Michael Fesser came to the city of Westland after he was wrongly arrested, said he wanted an organization. We gathered people together, and Joy and I have held strong over the last 3 or 4 years as much as we could. I recently started showing up to our Friends Westland Alliances meetings. I think that's important because our group, as somebody mentioned, is BIPOC-centered. It actually did start with somebody who identifies as white, and we had to tell them to take a back seat because they wanted to have all the conversations for us and all these other things. And I said, there's not going to be any trust or any of that built unless us BIPOC people get to sit down with the people that we're trying to make a change with. You can join us, but we need to be there, and we need to let them know that, see the faces of what's going on, not through a mediator. So our goal is we are rebuilding. We're looking to possibly, as Joy mentioned, right now we're actually working with the school district, and I say working loosely because Westland Alliance knows working with the Westland-Wilsonville School District as other school districts, which to me, I try to impress upon them that a school district issue with racism is a community district with racism. It only really takes, and being a creative writer and somebody who went to school for writing, it only takes a few letters to, individuals we know that run newspapers or others to, put them on blast, basically. But we're right now working to figure out a way to work better with the school district because we know multiple kids who have been subject to verbal abuse, verbal assault. We are also looking just to try to build and using the term BIPOC to include, anything non-white identifying, solely non-white identifying, creating a safe space because, as somebody mentioned, as you mentioned, there was there's very few BIPOC teachers in Westland-Wilsonville either. So, these children that we're working with their parents, they don't really have any place to go that they feel safe. And it's interesting because they just don't understand that they feel safe, but they don't understand what a safe place is or how to create a safe place for BIPOC children. So we're hopefully going to be doing that. We actually showed up, I don't know if any of you know, Beaverton has an amazing Black Parents Student Union group that meets. We got on their mailing list. They actually hired a consultant who used to work for the Department of Oregon Education. He's been showing up at their meetings, and it's been so it's been like so educational to visit those meetings. So we're just trying to get out there more. I met with Bruce, and our schedules are just crazy. But I try to show up to respond to racism when I can. So I think that if there's an opportunity for the people who have groups in here, I work for Kaiser Permanente. It's like one of the biggest employers probably in the area. I actually am one of the national leads for our Latinx business resource group, and very good at networking within that. And I'm glad somebody mentioned business resource groups, because we're always looking for community, especially here in Oregon. So I would love to bring them out to help out where they can, and even with community events, cultural events, and other things like that. So I would love to connect, because one of the things that we're doing, even with the school board thing, is I'm copying Bruce, or blind copying Bruce on emails that we're sending back and forth. And even though he's busy, he's aware of what's going on. So I think that could be a part of the issue too. Like even just in Westland, it's so fragmented. There's like, they have like all these little areas. This group is disparate in the way that Clackamas County is so big. So if there's a way we can create awareness of what's going on within these little groups, and I know Bruce has been talking about that since the first time I met him, to where it's like, oh yeah, we have multiple kids in our school district that are like dealing with being called racist language, and the school board, and one of them was a teacher's child. So we're fighting against the idea of like administration. And so, letting other people understand and know what's going on in an effort to say, we talked to Westland Alliance, and I said, hey, would you be willing to write a letter if it comes to the point of where they're not looking to sit down with us and address these concerns? So I'm thinking more, imagining like having a distribution list where these things go on, and we can get people from other communities, because it also having, I think, eyes from other communities on each other's community is so important, especially in places like Oregon City, which probably leans definitely more right. When these things go on, it's people, to find those people are few and far between. So yeah, it is kind of purplish maybe, yeah. So anyway, I would love to meet more of you, and we talked about possibly, we did our kind of like Westland's first Juneteenth event a couple years ago. Like it was a big thing. The city put money behind it. I kind of keep poking. I know the DEI person at the city of Westland. When something goes on, I poke him and say, hey, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? People are, this needs to be addressed, and it doesn't need to be addressed by, yes, it's going on. It needs to be addressed by, please reach out to that person who in the community faced this particular situation and sit down with them, because they are telling everybody that the city is doing nothing. So I'd love to get more people together, and I love to write letters and emails to be able to do that for your groups and learn from what you're going through too, and be able to use that to apply to the work that we're doing in the future. So thank you.
Hi, I'm Michelle, and I just wanted to make the point that I feel most people probably do not know what DEI is, or why it is important, or what the Clackamas County Commission just did, or they probably can't even name who the commissioners are. So if we're looking for an action to undertake, it should be to make sure people in our circles do know what it is, why it's important, what happened, and what we want them to do about it. Because probably the people in this room are the exception and not the rule as to the vast majority of what people know and understand about the situation.
So I think that's a great segue to wrap this up. Again, I'm going to just keep plugging Clackamas County Equity Coalition. but also to the points people have been making, like, seriously. Wow, some of you, I know some of you have had to leave because, again, we're way over time. But connect with each other if you have the chance today, if you haven't already. And yeah, I think with that, I'll let you go off into the afternoon. Thank you all again for a great conversation. Good night.